It was a summer's day like any other when I first set foot on the windswept moors of Pendle Hill. My twin brother James and I were 8 years old, our blonde pigtails tied in matching bows as we clutched our mother's hands, eager to explore the vast expanse of wild heather that stretched before us. Our parents had warned us about the hill, how it was cursed, how the veil between reality and madness was thin, but we didn't believe them. We were children, after all. The world was a magical place, full of wonder and enchantment. As we wandered deeper into the moors, the air grew thick with an eerie silence. The only sound was the rustle of heather beneath our feet, like whispers from the earth itself. James and I looked at each other, our eyes sparkling with excitement. We felt like we were on a secret adventure, one that only we could see. Our mother stopped suddenly, her grip on our hands tightening as she gazed out at something in the distance. "Look," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. James and I followed her gaze, our hearts skipping a beat as we saw it. An ancient stone circle, its stones weathered to a moss-covered gray that seemed to blend seamlessly into the landscape. We'd seen pictures of these things in books, but nothing could have prepared us for the real thing. As we approached the circle, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was as if the stones were watching us, waiting for us to make a move. James, ever the skeptic, just laughed and told me I was being silly. But I knew what I saw, a strange energy emanating from the center of the circle, like a dark pulse that seemed to be calling to us. Our mother led us around the perimeter of the circle, her eyes fixed on something in the distance. "This is where our ancestors used to come," she said, her voice full of reverence. "To seek guidance, to make offerings. They believed that the spirits of the land could hear their prayers, could grant them wisdom and protection." James and I looked at each other, feeling a thrill of excitement. We wanted to believe in this magic, to feel like we were part of something bigger than ourselves. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the moors, our mother's expression turned serious. "We need to get back," she said, her voice firm but urgent. "It's getting late." James and I nodded reluctantly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd left something behind, something important. As we walked away from the circle, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A figure, tall and imposing, standing just beyond the tree line. I spun around, but there was no one there. James looked at me, concerned. "What is it?" he asked. I shook my head, trying to clear the cobwebs. "Nothing," I said, but I knew what I saw, a presence that seemed to be watching us, waiting for us to make our next move. As we grew older, my brother James and I began to hear whispers about our family's past. Whispers that spoke of madness and despair, of a legacy that seemed to follow us wherever we went. Our parents had always been tight-lipped about the subject, but now it seemed like they were hiding something from us. One summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, our mother called us into the kitchen. She looked pale and worried, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "James," she said, her voice trembling. "Emily, I need to tell you something." We exchanged a nervous glance. What could she possibly say that would make our lives so difficult? But my mother's next words sent a chill down my spine. "You know about the Somnium, don't you?" she asked, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. "The dark place where our ancestors used to go to seek guidance." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I remembered that ancient stone circle on Pendle Hill. My mother continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's said that the Somnium was cursed by an old woman, one who was wronged by our family in the past. She placed a curse on us, a curse that would drive us mad with visions and hallucinations." I looked at James, my twin brother, but he just shook his head as if trying to clear the cobwebs. We'd heard stories about curses before, but this was different. This felt real. Our mother took a deep breath, her eyes locked on ours. "I've been having these dreams," she said, her voice laced with fear. "Dreams that feel so real, like I'm right back in the Somnium." James and I exchanged a nervous glance. What was happening to our mother? And what did it have to do with us? As the night drew in, casting long shadows across the kitchen, my mother's words hung in the air like a challenge. We knew then that we had to uncover the truth about the Somnium, no matter how dark or terrifying it might be. As the days passed, our family became increasingly divided. My parents argued more often, their voices hushed but their words laced with venom. James and I grew more withdrawn, unsure of how to navigate the treacherous waters of our own family dynamics. Our mother's dreams continued to plague her, and she became convinced that the Somnium was calling to us, drawing us in with an otherworldly allure. She begged my father to take us on a journey to the hill, to uncover the secrets of our family's past and break the curse that had haunted us for so long. But he refused, his face set in a stubborn expression. "It's not safe," he said, his voice cold and dismissive. "You're just going to get yourselves killed." I felt a surge of anger at my father's words. Why was he so opposed to the idea? Didn't he care that we were being torn apart by our own family's secrets? James and I exchanged a frustrated glance. We knew that our mother was right. We had to know the truth about the Somnium, no matter what dangers lay ahead. But my father's refusal left us feeling isolated and alone, like we were caught in a web of our own making. One night, as the storm raged outside, James and I snuck out of the house, determined to uncover the truth about the Somnium for ourselves. We crept through the darkness, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls, until we reached the ancient stone circle on Pendle Hill. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I could feel the presence of the Somnium looming over us like a specter. James and I stood there, frozen in uncertainty, as the wind howled around us like a chorus of lost souls. And then, without warning, my brother vanished into thin air. I called out for James, but there was only silence. I frantically scanned the circle, my heart racing with fear. And then, like a ghostly apparition, he reappeared beside me. His eyes were wild and unfocused, his skin deathly pale. "What happened?" I whispered, grabbing at his arms to steady him. James shook his head, his voice barely audible over the wind. "I saw things," he said, his eyes darting around the circle as if searching for something. "Things that shouldn't be seen." I felt a chill run down my spine as James's words hung in the air like a challenge. What had he seen? And what did it have to do with the Somnium? As we stood there, frozen in uncertainty, I began to hear whispers on the wind. Faint at first, they grew louder and more urgent until I could make out words and phrases amidst the rustling leaves. "Get out while you still can," a voice hissed. "Leave now and never come back." James and I exchanged a terrified glance. Who was speaking to us, and what did they want? But as we looked around the circle, I realized that we were alone. There was no one in sight, just the wind and the trees swaying ominously in the darkness. The whispers grew louder still, until it felt like the entire world was speaking to us at once. "You shouldn't be here," a voice shouted above the din. "This is a place of death." I felt James's grip on my arm tighten as he whispered a single word in my ear: "Run." As we fled the stone circle, I could feel the weight of the whispers bearing down on us. The wind howled and the trees creaked, as if warning us to leave the Somnium behind. But James and I were driven by a curiosity that would not be silenced. We knew that we had to uncover the secrets of our family's past, no matter what dangers lay ahead. We followed the winding path that led us deeper into the heart of the forest, until we came upon an ancient ruin hidden away from prying eyes. The air was heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten lore, and I could feel the pulse of history vibrating through the stones. James and I explored the ruin with a sense of wonder and trepidation, uncovering artifacts and relics that told the story of our family's dark past. We found ancient texts bound in black leather, adorned with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe like living things. And at the heart of the ruin, we discovered a great stone door hidden behind a tangle of vines and creepers. The door was covered in intricate carvings, depicting scenes of great battles and powerful magic. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that this must be the entrance to the Somnium itself. But as we reached out to touch the door, it swung open with a loud creak, revealing a dark and foreboding passageway beyond. James hesitated at the threshold, his eyes fixed on the darkness within. "What do you think is in there?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of my own heart. I steeled myself for what lay ahead, knowing that we had to face whatever dangers lurked within the Somnium head-on. Together, hand in hand, we stepped into the unknown. We stepped into the unknown passageway, our hearts pounding in unison. The air was thick with the scent of incense and something else, something darker and more primal. I could feel the weight of the Somnium's power bearing down on us, like a physical presence that pressed against my skin. James and I walked deeper into the passageway, our footsteps echoing off the cold stone walls. We found ourselves in a great hall filled with candles and strange artifacts, each one more bizarre than the last. In the center of the room, a figure stood waiting for us. It was an old man, his face twisted by age and cruelty, his eyes blazing with a malevolent intensity. "Welcome, children," he croaked, his voice like a rusty gate. "I have been waiting for you." He beckoned us closer, his bony fingers gesturing like a puppeteer manipulating strings. I felt James's hand tighten around mine, as if we were two soldiers facing into battle together. We approached the old man, our senses on high alert, ready to defend ourselves against whatever horrors lay ahead. But as we drew near, I saw that he was holding something in his hands, a small, leather-bound book, adorned with strange symbols and markings. "This is the journal of your ancestors," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "The secrets of the Somnium are contained within its pages." He opened the book, revealing pages filled with dark incantations and forbidden knowledge. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that we were staring into the very heart of darkness itself. The old man began to recite from the journal, his voice weaving a spell of dark power and malevolence. I could feel James's grip on mine falter, as if he was being drawn under by some unseen force. And then, everything went black. I came to in a dimly lit room, my head throbbing with pain. The old man was nowhere to be seen, but I could sense his presence lurking just beyond the edge of perception. James was by my side, his eyes vacant and expressionless. "What happened?" I asked him, trying to shake off the haze of confusion. He shook his head, his gaze drifting away like a lost soul searching for a haven. "I don't know," he replied in a flat tone, his voice devoid of emotion. "I just woke up here. We were in some kind of ancient temple, the walls adorned with strange symbols and carvings that seemed to writhe and twist in the flickering candlelight. I stumbled to my feet, trying to shake off the lingering fogginess of sleep. The air was heavy with an unsettling energy, like the atmosphere before a storm breaks out. Suddenly, we heard footsteps echoing through the temple, growing louder with each passing moment. James's eyes snapped back into focus, and he stood up, his movements stiff and jerky. "It's coming," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of my own heart. A figure emerged from the shadows, its features indistinct and shifting like a living thing. I felt James's hand wrap around mine, as if in a desperate bid to hold onto reality. The creature drew closer, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable horror that threatened to consume us whole. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, everything went black. The ground beneath us gave way, and we tumbled through a hidden doorway into the depths of the Somnium. The air was thick with an otherworldly mist that swirled around us like a living entity. I felt James's hand slip from mine as we fell, and I was left to plummet downwards alone, my stomach lurching with a sense of weightless terror. We landed hard on a cold, dark surface, the impact knocking the wind from my lungs. As I struggled to catch my breath, I saw that we were in some kind of vast, cavernous space, filled with towering crystalline formations that refracted and distorted the dim light. The air was heavy with an electric charge that made my hair stand on end. A figure emerged from the shadows, its features indistinct and shifting like a living thing. I felt James's hand close around mine again, as if in a desperate bid to hold onto reality. "We're here," it said, its voice like a sigh of relief. The Somnium. It led us deeper into the heart of the caverns, the air growing thick with an increasingly potent hallucinatory scent. I felt my grip on reality begin to slip, as if the very fabric of our world was unraveling around me. We came to a great crystal door, its surface etched with ancient runes that pulsed with a malevolent energy. The figure raised a hand, and the door slid open with a soft screech, revealing a passageway into the very depths of madness itself. "This is where our ancestors were taken," it said, its voice dripping with a mixture of sorrow and foreboding. "And this is where we will be taken too." The air was heavy, with an almost palpable sense of malevolence, as we stepped through the crystal doorway into the depths of the Somnium. The passageway twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the heart of the hill. I could feel James's hand still clasped in mine, but his grip was like a vice, unyielding and unforgiving. We were walking on a thin layer of solid earth, the ground beneath us giving way to a sea of writhing, pulsing tendrils that seemed to writhe and twist like living things. The air was thick with an almost familiar scent, like something I had known but could not quite recall. It sent a shiver down my spine as we descended further into the darkness. We came to a great underground chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. The walls were lined with ancient, crumbling statues that seemed to loom over us, their faces twisted into grotesque grins. In the center of the room, a massive stone statue stood upright, its body carved from the very rock itself. It was as if we had stumbled upon some forgotten, long-abandoned temple. And yet, despite the sense of age and decay that hung in the air, there was something almost alive about it. The statue seemed to be watching us, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly energy. I felt James's hand tighten around mine as he took a step forward, his eyes fixed upon the statue. And then, without warning, the ground gave way beneath him. He fell through a hidden opening in the floor, disappearing into the darkness below. I was left standing alone, surrounded by the twisted statues and the oppressive sense of malevolence that hung over us all. As I stood there, frozen in uncertainty, the statues around me began to shift and writhe like living things. Their faces twisted into grotesque grins as they seemed to close in on me. The air grew thick with an almost familiar scent, like something I had known but could not quite recall. It sent a shiver down my spine as the memories of my childhood began to flood back, tainted by a sense of corruption and decay. I saw myself playing in a sun-drenched field, laughing and carefree. But as I looked closer, I saw that the flowers were withered and dead, and the sky was a sickly yellow hue. The grass beneath my feet seemed to writhe and twist like snakes, pulling me down into the earth. I tried to take a step forward, but my legs felt heavy and unresponsive, as if they were rooted to the spot. The statues seemed to be closing in on me, their eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. I felt my grip on reality begin to slip, as if the very fabric of my existence was unraveling around me. And then, suddenly, everything went white. When my vision cleared, I found myself standing at the edge of a vast, desolate plain. The sky above was a deep, bloody red, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to stretch on forever in every direction. James was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel his presence all around me like a faint whisper in my ear. "We're not who we think we are," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Our memories are past. They're all just illusions. We're just pawns in some greater game." I stumbled forward, blindly trying to find my way through the desolate landscape. But every step I took seemed to lead me further from reality itself. The world around me was fading away, like a painting left out in the rain. And at the heart of it all, I could feel something ancient and malevolent stirring, waiting for its next victim. As I stumbled through the desolate landscape, I began to feel a strange sense of connection to the ground beneath my feet. It was as if the earth itself was calling out to me, urging me forward. And then suddenly I saw him, James, standing in front of me with a look of cold calculation on his face. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "The others are coming." I tried to reach out to him, to grab onto the fragile thread of our relationship that still remained intact, but it was too late. He had already turned away from me, disappearing into the distance as if he were a ghost. I was left standing alone, surrounded by the endless expanse of nothingness. And then I saw them, the others, emerging from the horizon like a dark tide. They were creatures unlike any I had ever seen, their bodies twisted and deformed in ways that defied human comprehension. "They're our kin," James said, his voice cold and detached as he approached me. "We have blood ties to them." I felt a surge of rage and betrayal, my mind reeling with the implications of what he was saying. But before I could react, one of the others reached out and touched my face. It was as if they had been waiting for me all along, their eyes burning with an otherworldly hunger. "You're one of us," it said, its voice like a rusty gate. "You've always been one of us." I tried to scream, but my voice was lost in the wind. The world around me began to spin and distort, as if reality itself was unraveling before my eyes. And when everything finally came back into focus, I found myself standing in a dark, damp chamber deep beneath the earth. James was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel his presence all around me, like a shadow on the wall. "Welcome home," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "You're one of us now." As I stood there, frozen in terror, James began to laugh. His eyes seemed to gleam with an otherworldly light as he took a step closer to me. "You're one of us now," he repeated, his voice dripping with malice. "We'll show you the true meaning of family." I tried to run, but my legs were frozen in place. The others closed in around me, their eyes burning with an unholy hunger. I felt myself being pulled down into a vortex of madness, as if reality itself was unraveling before my eyes. "We're going home," James said, his voice echoing through the caverns of my mind. "We'll show you the secrets of our family's past." The memories came flooding back, all the twisted lies, the broken promises, the endless cycle of violence and betrayal. I felt myself being pulled down into a sea of madness, as if I was drowning in a tide of despair. And then everything went black. When I came to, I found myself standing at the edge of a vast, open plain. The sky above was a deep, bloody red, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to stretch on forever in every direction. James stood beside me, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. "This is where we come from," he said, his voice echoing through the desolate landscape. "This is our true home." I looked around, trying to take it all in, but my mind was a jumble of conflicting memories and emotions. I felt like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare with no escape in sight. And then I saw her, my mother, standing in the distance like a ghostly apparition. Her eyes were black as coal, and her skin was deathly pale. She beckoned to me, her hand extended like a bony finger. "Come home," she said, her voice echoing through the plain. "Come home to us." I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest, and then everything went black again.